Okay, hi. So my name is Natalia Różycka, and I'm a UX designer. And we are going to talk today about collaboration between Frontend and UX. Just to give you a short intro about my background, I work for Roche, which is a biotech company. It makes diagnostic devices and drugs. And in Poland, we have probably the biggest UX department in Poland. It's more than 25 people. And we have almost 100 front-end developers only. So I'm going to speak from our common experience. But let me start with a short story. I was talking to a colleague about this presentation, and she told me I should give it a name, UX Terror. And I was surprised. She explained that, front-end developers, they don't really like us. They think we are stubborn. They think we are pushy, that we always think to have things our way. And I was like, what? Are you crazy? These guys love us. Every time I send them my prototype, instead of implementing it, they send me back this funny little game to spot the 10 differences between the two things. And only if I solve this puzzle, they send me back the real thing. But, it got me thinking, is it really that bad? And I started to ask myself, are we really assholes? And the more I thought about it, the more I came to the conclusion, no, we are not assholes. And that was supposed to be the end of this presentation, but then someone told me, thank you. But then someone told me that I have to be here for like half an hour, so I decided to take a UX approach to this presentation. And since we have so many UX designers and front-end developers, we have interviewed them and we have surveyed them to ask what they think about UX and front-end collaborations. So the kind of questions we have asked were, what, in your opinion, moves front-end developer from good to great? What is it in UX people that makes you furious when you work with them? And so on. When I analyzed the results of this survey, I noticed that, first of all, there are many misconceptions about what UX actually is. So first, I will try to get it straight for you and explain what UX actually is. And in the second part, we'll move on to some pieces of advice on how to set up our collaboration so that we don't hate each other at the end of the project. Okay, so the first myth that came up in questioning front-end guys was that it seems like you think about UX as prototyping. However, if you think about it, in UX, there is the word user. So there should be some kind of interaction. The way we think about ourselves is that we are like Mr. T from the A-team. Do you know Mr. T? Okay, great. So the reason why we think we are like Mr. T is not because we are black and we wear gold chains on the neck, but because of the shape of the letter T. So yes, that's correct. We do have deep skills, or we should have deep skills in the design part, but we should have equally deep skills in the user research. So, and actually, it's the user research that gives it much more value, gives more value to the project than just plain interaction design. Interaction design can be done by other people. In the worst case, it could be done by the graphic designer. It could be done by a design-oriented front-end developer. You wouldn't need to have a UX for it. So UX in the project is for communicating with users, either at the beginning or later in testing. Okay, The next myth that you seem to have is that we are just people who are wasting time on developing high-fee prototypes, high-fidelity prototypes. So in most of the cases, this is not true, because different fidelities of prototypes serve different purposes. So when we are starting the project, we like to do paper prototyping, which is a method of getting to many ideas at the same time. So at this stage, we just want to have many concurrent designs and throw out 99% of them and just get the best one to polish later. The other fidelity that we might want to use is low fidelity prototyping. It's already digital. Usually it's not colorful. There are not so many things that we can do with fonts. And so basically, this type of prototyping is for getting the flow right, just to check if the screens go well from one to another. But and in some cases, we could finish here with the low fidelity prototypes. However, if we want to test with users, we normally need high fidelity prototypes. The reason for it is that we need some extra means of conveying information. So like Zach was saying just before me about animations, movement is one way of conveying information. The same thing is color. The same thing is different sizes of fonts. The same thing is alignment of elements. And low fidelity prototyping doesn't give us this value. So for testing, we would normally use high fidelity. Okay, and the third myth about UX people is that we are stubborn. And I do admit that we are sometimes stubborn. Sometimes we are stubborn without a reason. And this is when we forget that prototype is just the starting point for the conversation, and it has to be iterated. This is the nature of the prototype, to be iterated. So this is being stubborn without a reason if we just stick to the prototype and we are protective about our baby. But there are some other cases when we need to be stubborn, we need to put our foot down, and it can happen if we want to, for example, ensure the consistency of entire solution. So sometimes we need to sacrifice one element or one screen so that it's not optimally designed, just to maintain the consistency across the entire solution. The second case is using known UI patterns. So sometimes you front-end developers come to us and you show us this new fancy thing, this new framework, this new component that you want to use. But if it's really, sometimes it's cool, but we are often not sure if it would test well with users. So it can happen, well, let me put it differently. So if we don't have much time for usability testing, it's always safer to go with the known, well-recognized UI patterns. For example, a search box is a box and it has a button. That's much safer than to test it something completely new. And the third case is when you are saying something, when you are giving us your new ideas too far in the project. So it can happen that your idea is better than ours, but it's just too late. It's been already tested. It doesn't make sense to go 5 steps back and redo the whole thing. Okay, we're done with the myths. Are you still with me? Okay, great. So now we're going to go through some pieces of advice that you can use against UX people in your advantage. So I hope there are no UX people in the room. Step number 1. Do you know who that is? No? Facebook. Yes, she's from Facebook. Okay, that's Sheryl Sandberg. She is a COO of Facebook, whatever a COO is. And I have her on the slide because she has written a book called Lean In, which means like you have to do this kind of movement, lean in, lean forward. And this book is for women in the workplace. So what does she say in this book? She says, hey, women, you have great ideas. You are brilliant. Why are you sitting in the back of the room? Why aren't you sitting at the table with the men, stating your opinions, taking the decisions that also affect you? Why are you like this? Stop that. And the reason I'm saying about this is that I think that there should be a book like this for you guys. Because sometimes when we are talking about how the project will be set up, how UX front-end collaboration should look like, you are just taking anything that UX gives you. We're saying we'll give you prototypes, you're fine. We're telling you that you will have many tools and you will have to switch between them and find the most updated screen. You're good. You are not just stepping there to be a part of the conversation. So, I wanted to give you some pieces of advice on how you can actually set up your project and what kind of things you can demand or request from your UX team. So, before we go into details, in my opinion, it always helps first to meet in person. I'm not sure if you are co-located with your UX people. Do you actually work with UX people? How many of you work with UX here? Okay, it looks like 1/3 maybe. Okay, so I think it always makes sense to meet in person because at some point later in the project there are going to be some different opinions between you guys, and it's always nicer to know the face behind the email, and it helps to be kinder if you know the person. Second reason to meet is that there are many things you have to discuss. So if you're not meeting, probably you are going to have the setup done the way UX wants it. Okay, and now I have to ask you to be very patient because there are going to be about 2 or 3 boring slides. So stick with me, we'll get to something more interesting later, but this is important, this is the core of my advice for you. Okay, so what are the UX deliverables that you might need? First of all, because of our role, we usually know a lot about the users, obviously, but we also know a lot about the business. So you should request the UX, or the UX should actually impose it on you to give you this information, to present what is the reason why we are making this application, how the users are using it currently, how they're probably going to use it in the future, and so on. Not just sharing documents that contain this kind of information, but actually presenting it to you so that you understand what you're doing. Second thing is the style guides. So we UX people, along with prototypes, we also make style guides. Then the graphic designers make their own style guides, and probably after today's morning presentation, you will also make your own style guide in the end. Then prototypes, obviously. And here, I guess you will not be the person deciding on what fidelity of the prototype will be the best for you. However, you can decide whether the prototypes should be interactive or not. So in most of the cases, we have 2 choices to build prototypes. One is interactive, and this is how we build them for usability testing. So it's like a black box. You just have to click around and check what works. The second way to build prototypes, or maybe to change the interactive prototypes, is just to list every screen, every state, like a series of snapshots. And I think this is more convenient for you because you don't have to figure out what are all the possible combinations. Later on, we have a lot of supplementary documentation. If the application is complicated, if there are workflows, if there are different user roles, you might need to take a look at this. It will be helpful for you. And at Roche, what we do is UX is a hub. So we work separately with the graphical designer. We iterate with him. And once we have his designs ready, we hand it over to the dev team. So in some cases, it will be also kind of UX deliverable as a proxy. Okay, that was the first boring slide, and now the second boring slide. So once you are decided on what types of documents you want, or what kinds of things you want to get from UX, it's important that you decide on the tools. And I have underlined commenting because I believe that the tool that you choose drives the kind of communication you have. So for example, if I share prototypes with you in a platform that doesn't allow commenting on the prototype, you are much less likely to give me comments about this prototype. So be careful that it's easy for you to comment. So this is just an example. This is how it works in the team I work currently. So one step is to have just a bunch of tools, but that's not all. When I was just preparing for this presentation, I realized how stupid it is. Sometimes we have, in the middle of the project, things get, let's say, you don't maintain everything well. So sometimes the prototype will be more up-to-date than the graphical design, and sometimes it will be the other way around. And in fact, it's the development team that has to figure out what is the most up-to-date screen. And they don't complain. But the way I think it could work is that you choose one source of truth. It doesn't have to be Jira. This is just one idea that a colleague of mine had. It could be any of the other places, but just pick it so that you always know that you have to refer to one place and not browse through all the ocean of documents and screens. All right. This will be just partly boring then. So the step number 3 is the design critique. So once you are in the project, you will start have some comments on the prototypes, probably. And I find the ways that front-end developers and developers in general comment on the prototypes, I find these things ineffective. So here's a little chart for you that can be helpful. So let's say that UX team is showing you the UX deliverable. So it could be, let's say, a prototype. It's the easiest to imagine. And then you have to think if you have comments. So if you don't have comments, as I said, you have to think again, because prototypes is a starting point in the discussion. You have to have comments. If you don't have comments, it means that you didn't look carefully enough. Second step is to think whether the timing is right. So if you have just realized, after seeing the same thing for the 5th time, and it has already been tested with users, if you only now realize that you have comment, yeah, it's just too late. You can try it, but you have to just say it in the moment you see it, and you have to push your UX team to show you whatever they have, even if it's just a paper prototype, as soon as possible. Okay, let's say the timing is right. So then you might have 2 kinds of comments. You might have a design comment. So when you are looking at the application, you can notice that there are some problems with it. So here, if you are going to give some critique to the UX designer, please be specific. So don't just say, here's an alternative example of doing the same thing. No, be specific. What is it that you think is wrong? So you can refer. These are some keywords that we are very sensitive to. So it's consistency, it's the flow, it's the proportions, it's the colors, it's the UI patterns. And in the very worst case, if you don't know how to use this vocabulary, in the worst case, you can just put yourself in the user's shoes and say, it just looks weird to me, Okay. The second kind of comments that you might have is the implementation comment. So it can happen that you are looking at something, you like it or you dislike it, but it will take ages to implement, or it will take ages to load, or whatever. So please don't bullshit us with saying it can't be done. Please don't disguise this kind of elements or this kind of problems as the design comments. Because it often happens that when a developer sees that something will be hard to implement, he says, the users will not like it. Like, what the? No, first of all, how would you know? No one knows if users will like it or not. Even if we have tested the prototype with users, we never know if they will like it. Once it's live, only then we will see if they kind of like it or not. So if you have implementation comment, please be straightforward, just spit it out, say how much time it will take. We are reasonable people. We understand that you cannot spend, I don't know, 2 or 4 weeks writing a small thing. We understand that. Okay, we're done. We're done with the most boring things, I think. And so I have one more weird thing to show you. So we have asked the UX designers to tell us, what do you think, what kind of types of front-end developers are there? And there were different opinions, but basically they boiled down to these 2 types. So they say like, okay, there is a hardcore developer and there is this design enthusiast. It might happen that you are doing things that are on both sides, but usually you are attracted just to one or the other. So a hardcore developer, he cares about the code. When you speak to him, he will refer to the frameworks. He's very technology-centric. Normally, when he's implementing, he would expect to have very detailed designs so that he doesn't need to figure out what to code. He can just code, you know, from top to down or whatever. I don't know how you code. Okay, I don't know. But he cares about the beautiful code. While the design enthusiast, he cares about the beautiful user interface. He's kind of interested in design. He wants to know the business context and the user's context. And often he does not implement one-to-one, but he builds up on our ideas. So for example, animations is a great idea, right? Because we don't have the tools to make good animations. We can just make these really bad-looking animations in the tools we are using for prototyping. So this kind of design enthusiast could improve what we already have. But now the strange thing happened. We have also asked people what makes a front-end developer good and bad. And see what happened. Can you see the difference? It was almost the same thing. There were no complaints about the diet, but other than that, it was, you know, the same. I don't know, you tell me what that means. And I'll add one more thing to it. They said that not implementing one-to-one is both good and bad. I don't know, you have to figure out. I have a hypothesis, and I think that maybe it means that, first of all, we perceive hardcore developers as harder to work with, I guess. And maybe and in some way we consider him bad to work with. I don't know. And the other thing is that maybe if the hardcore developer has ideas on the design and implements something in the way he thinks is good, maybe it's not as good as in the other case. But I'm not really sure if this is the link, so you can think about it today when you have your beer later on. Okay, so that was it. If you are interested to hear the other side of the story, what the front-end developers can say about UX front-end collaboration, we have a booth in the tent, so you can go and talk to them tomorrow. And I will upload the slide set tomorrow to this address. And thank you very much. Questions? Questions, anyone? There's one question. Oh no, it's a developer.
Hello, nice talk. Thank you very much.
Hi, thanks.
Is there something in your job called business terror?
Sorry? Is there a business terror?
In your job something called business terror? You know, like...
Not yet. Yes, I understand. Not yet, but I think there should be.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks. Any other question? Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
I have a question about A/B tests. Let's assume that you are conducting an A/B test with a button on which you have to measure the conversions. And you have, let's say, 4 or 5 variations of this button, in which one of them is pink, big, shiny, and it animates and rotates infinitely.
Okay.
And we can assume that this will convert the most, the best. And will you implement this button? And if not, why?
Okay. Okay. So first of all, I owe you an explanation. So probably I didn't emphasize enough that we build internal applications. So we don't care about conversion at all. But I can imagine this could happen that we are testing a solution that will be just the, I don't know, people will like it the most, yes? Or I don't know, it will be the most understandable by users, yes? Something like that. No, well, I would have to think about it. Well, normally we, because we are the owners of the prototype. So first of all, I would never put something like this on the prototype to be tested. So for that reason, it will never be selected by users. So I guess that's my answer to it. Here on the left side, yes.
Let's say there's a front-end developer that has like 1 day or 3 days to pick up some UX knowledge or UX skills, either for the sake of taking up some UX tasks or just for the sake of improving the collaboration with UX developers. What would you recommend as a starting point?
Okay, it depends. Are you also interested in research, in user research? Okay, both. So there is this great, do you know Coursera? Coursera.org. There is a great course. It's called Human-Computer Interaction. It's made by Stanford University. I took it some years ago, and I think it's really, really great. So, yeah, go ahead. And they're in the back.
Hi, it's a great talk. I have a question. You mentioned that you had a team of developers and a team of UX people.
Yes.
But is it possible to have a person that's both at the same time? Or would you like to have such person in a team?
Yeah, I wonder if these days are not gone. These are the days of the webmasters and so on. So the way I see it is that not only in IT, but many professions are going into specialization. So there's no longer like one guy that knows everything. However, I can imagine that there would be a person that knows it all. He will not just be as good as at everything. So it's a matter of choice. Do you want to know everything a little bit more shallow, or do you want to know one thing but deeply? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Okay, I know you want to have a drink. Okay, so thank you. It was a pleasure.